Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey.
I told you that we are completionists here on the podcast. I told you. I warned everybody. I said sometimes we complete things. Notice I didn't say all the time, because sometimes I don't care about part 2, and I could care less about part 3 if there is one. But sometimes when the movies are good enough, or when we've got something to say, and or a combination of both, we'll finish the trilogy or the quartet of films or whatever that looks like. And there we're doing that here today with this movie. As you know, it's The Dark Knight Rises. This is 3 films in a row that we've done, 3 reviews in a row, published week after week after week. And it's the Nolan vs. Kids. It's Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. We're back for the 3rd and final edition in what looks to be only a 3-movie universe. There's no signs of anyone going back to this, as we've kind of mentioned before. We'll get into that a little bit later on here today as well. But yes, today it's The Dark Knight Rises. If you are a fan of the original Spider-Man trilogy, a lot of this may sound a little bit familiar to you, or maybe it won't, and you'll come away from this going, that Dark Knight Rises film is the best freaking movie I've ever seen. Those two guys have no idea what they're talking about. And you know what? You're not necessarily wrong, because it's all subjective. And listen, we're not hiding behind that. It's just fact. What you love or hate, we may or may not agree with you. And that's just how this goes. It's a pop culture. It's entertainment. Everybody relax and try to have fun with it. So let's dive into this, kids, shall we? The Dark Knight Rises is a 2012 superhero film directed by Christopher Nolan, who co-wrote the screenplay with his brother, Jonathan, and the story with David S. Goyer. Based on the DC Comics character Batman, it is the final installment in Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy and the sequel to The Dark Knight from 2008. The film stars, of course, Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne / Batman, alongside an assorted cast of actors who bring to life these characters from the books and a whole lot more. This is a good one, kids. In terms of us diving in, we got a lot to talk about here today. Complete running time on this film is 164 minutes. Again, Warner Brothers, that's who we're talking about, of course, July 16, 2012 in New York City. And then, of course, July 20th, 2012 as a nationwide release in the United States and in the United Kingdom. The budget for this film, around $250 to $300 million gross and $230 million net budget. The box office for this film, they did it again, kids, 2 movies in a row. It made $1 billion. Nearly $1.1 billion. And that is your lowdown on The Dark Knight Rises. Phil, we talked about this when we did Batman Begins, and I asked you, it may have been off mic, how do you feel about doing the trilogy? Do you want to do the first 2? And it's like, well, may as well hit them all. So we're doing that here today. How long has it been since you've seen this flick? And am I correct in guessing, of the 3, this is the one you've seen the least, or am I wrong? You tell me.
Yeah, I've certainly seen this one the least. I used to have the box set on Blu-ray. I still have it somewhere, but who uses Blu-ray anymore?
Right.
So I've seen all 3 of them a bunch. When the 3rd one came out, I went to see a marathon of all 3 movies. And I was excited. I was excited, like most of us, for the 3rd movie in this trilogy. It didn't quite hit the mark. I think it's an enjoyable movie in some ways, but boy, does it have a lot of flaws.
Lot of flaws. Do you agree with my assessment of comparing this to Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man trilogy?
I think that's fair, because I think for most people, the 2nd movie is considered the best movie, and then the 3rd one, it kind of jumps off a cliff. It's hard. It's hard to do a good trilogy. It's hard to really nail that 3rd one. And we talked about it a little bit before we started recording of when something's successful, it's almost worse than something doing poorly, because when something's successful, that means there are more people in the room, there are more cooks in the kitchen. there's a more concerted effort to make sure this thing does not fail. And hey, man, any coach will tell you of any sport, when you try not to lose, often you lose.
Yeah, the goal of the game cannot be, we got to be sure not to lose this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When you start playing not to lose, you often lose.
Yeah, because you're losing focus.
Yeah.
On what got you there to begin with. Is that what happened here? And look, it's the same creative people, kids. Same director, same screenwriter, same producer, same studio. Feel everything's the same except for the cast. Like, I don't know. Was the focus lost overall? What do you think?
I think that I can tell that Christopher Nolan probably lost some battles with the studio about creative decisions. You can see that throughout this movie. And I also think it got tougher to do the balancing act of grounded and fantastical stuff. I feel like this movie, it struggled the most of trying to make everything grounded in reality, because some of the stuff you're trying to tell me it's grounded, but it just doesn't work. You're trying to tell me this movie is grounded in reality, but then you have uh, dozens of cops trapped in this underground tunnel, and then they just come out like nothing happened. Like, where were these people eating? Where were they using the bathroom? What, they were trapped in that tunnel for a long time, and they just come back out like nothing has happened. That's stupid. I mean, some of the stuff with the stock exchange and how Bruce lost all of his money. No, if you know anything about the stock exchange and the authorization to put trades in, it doesn't make sense. Also, his power getting cut off immediately, like it doesn't make sense at all.
Oh, the shovel has come out. We've began to dig for the devil's in the details, kids, and we're starting to dig and find them. And it doesn't take a lot of digging before you realize, oh, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a guy to go and run for all of these plot holes, but there are quite a few plot holes in this movie, and I think the plot holes feel more glaring because the first two movies made such a concentrated effort of saying this is realistic, this is grounded, and so then when you get to this movie, it's like, well, wait a minute, this guy Bruce Wayne's back was broken, and you're telling me he didn't go and get surgery on it to get better and come back to Gotham? No, a guy just hit him very hard in his back, and then he went through this arduous task to climb out of this tunnel, and that's how he fixed his back? No, that doesn't make sense at all. That's not realistic at all.
You mean to tell me that I'm not supposed to believe that this old dude hanging out in this pit of a prison that somehow has cable and power and maybe, I guess, plumbing, but it's still in the bottom of this big well or whatever it is. Like, just because this old dude punches you in the back and puts your vertebrae back in place, that's not believable?
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
but that's what I'm saying. The first two movies are so much built on reality and so grounded. And then you come to this movie, and there's so many things that are very much ridiculous comic book science.
This third movie, in my opinion, it suffers greatly from what you just described, because, Phil, if you establish from the first movie, from the jump, that this is partial reality, partial comic book science, okay, fine. Maybe this movie holds up a little bit better. But when you establish in movie one, this is what Batman looks like in the real world, and you stick to that, and part two, you're sticking to that a lot more than you did, because here's the Oscar nomination, and here's all this public attention, and the campaign to get this thing into the Academy Awards. Well, it's grounded, it's real. Then you can't do this third movie with the weird nonsense that happens in it, because then you're right, it doesn't fit the other two at all.
Yeah, no, and I think that's kind of the gift and the curse, or the pros and the cons that comes with trying to make your franchise so grounded. And it's a franchise that is built off of a lot of things that are fantastical or nonsensical, and so it's like the longer you try to fit it into this category of making it grounded, the harder it's going to be.
The harder it's going to be, yeah, because it's like, it's a piece of the puzzle, Phil, that just doesn't fit. The other pieces are together; they're fine. This one does not fit, honestly.
Yeah. But this despite all of that, there are a lot of things I do like about this movie.
There's some good stuff here. But it needs to be said from the jump, from the very beginning of this review, Christopher Nolan hesitated about coming back to this.
Mm-hmm.
And he only agreed after developing the story with his brother, who also helped him write part 2, because the two of them together with Goyer felt that they could conclude the series on a satisfactory note. That word bugs me to death. I don't want satisfactory, Phil. I want epic send-off to this trilogy, and I don't think we got that here.
No. I think that it's satisfying in some ways, but yeah, I don't think it was the epic send-off that they probably hoped for.
I honestly don't think it was. Not for me, anyway. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot going on here. And, you know, let's jump into this cast because we've got to talk about this story. I don't want us to just say, you know, the typical, what'd you think about the bad guy's plot? Because, oh my God, are there problems with that?
Yeah.
But let's start off with the cast here, though. You've got the usual suspects have returned, of course, namely, first and foremost, Christian Bale. Getting to flex a little bit here, Phil, more than he has in the other two films in terms of, you know, his being able to have a little bit more range as Bruce Wayne. This is a defeated Bruce Wayne. This is a defeated Batman. This is years after, of course, the second movie takes place. And, you know, the city believes Dent to have been a hero. That's where we left off last time. And now we've got, you know, Bruce Wayne who's walking around with a cane. He's got a Van Dyke for whatever reason. Like a full beard would have made more sense, but I'll go along. I'll play along. But he's a recluse. He never appears in public anymore. You know, Wayne Enterprises is going down the crapper fast because there's nothing being done with the company. But again, Phil, at least he gets to show some range this time. Once again, no matter what's happening in this film, I feel Christian Bale does a bang-up job.
Yeah.
Of the three performances, do you hold this one along the same lines as the other two, or do you think this one underperforms or overperforms the other two films?
I think a lot of the main core cast, they got some of their most dramatic stuff to sink their teeth in, and I think that they did very well with it. Like, for example, I think the argument with Bruce and Alfred is very good. The argument that they have before he fires him is so good. Some of their exchanges in the Batcave when he's telling him that he's going to go back out there, and the entire time Alfred is trying to warn him not to go back out there. I think both of these guys do some great acting in those scenes, particularly like Michael Caine. I thought he was tremendous in this movie. I think this was easily his best performance as Alfred.
So good. I had tears in my eyes when Alfred was crying. Honestly, when he was choking up talking to Bruce in the house, it was awesome.
Yeah, so many great lines from him in this movie. When he comes back from the first time going back out there, and he's like, "Nope, you're afraid. You were afraid that I was going to fail, and I didn't." He's like, "No, I'm not afraid that you're going to fail. I'm afraid that you want to fail." That's a great line. Or, of course, classic line from this entire trilogy. One of his most enduring lines of, "No, at some point we've got to stop trying to outsmart the truth and let it have its day."
And dude, he flat out tells him in the movie, "You left that behind. You're not Batman anymore. It's time to move past that now."
Yeah, I think that he's watched this guy from the time period between Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, and he's lost his will to keep going back out there for a reason. It's like you're not going back out there because you feel like you need this. It feels like you're going back out there because you've given up and you've lost your will to live. I'm not going to watch you go out there and get yourself killed just because you don't have anything else to live for in your mind. And so I all of his motivations were, I think, very, very good. I think his acting was incredible. I said that stairway scene where they're arguing and he finally tells him that he burned that letter. And man, to Christian Bale's credit as well, he did some great acting and he goes, "How dare you? How dare you use her to try to get me to stop doing this?" He's like, I'm not trying to lie to you. But that's where he gives the great line of, "Man, we got to stop trying to outsmart the truth here and let the truth have its day. I didn't want to tell you the truth because I felt like it was too painful for you. But if telling you the truth will get you to see this, then I have to." And man, again, that entire dialogue, the other lines he gives of, he's like, "Man, I know what this means. I know it means you hating me and having the idea of the guys that I've cared for and loved for from the very first time I heard his cries in this household. And if that means having you hate me and you still being alive, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, and look, dude, I think we have to say something about the chemistry between these two guys too, man. Like they had it from the first movie. Dude, they still have it here. What a pairing, man. It gutted me to see that when I first saw this movie, the way they split up. It gutted me to see that happen.
Yeah, Alfred making the decision of, I will not be a part of this. I will not sit here. I will not stay here and watch you kill yourself. Because when you first went out there, I understood. I understood the mission and everything that came with it. Even his dialogue where he's telling him, yeah, I never wanted you to come back here. I never wanted you to come back to Gotham because there's nothing here for you.
So, is he right? Is Alfred right about everything he's saying? Because should Batman be done? We know what happens with Bane and the movie unfolds how it unfolds, but in those moments when he's talking, is he right about what he's saying, or does Alfred not see the big picture? Like, what do you think? What would be your input on that?
Yes and no, because I see Alfred's concern, and I understand him saying, you can't go out there if you don't know what you're fighting for anymore. If you go out there and you don't know what you're fighting for, you're not driven in the same way that you were when you first went out there. You're just going to get yourself killed. He's right about that. But I have many issues with the thought of Bruce, after everything that happened in the first two movies and everything we're supposed to know about this character, I have many problems with him deciding, I'm just going to be a recluse and I'm not going to be Batman anymore. I just don't see him doing that in character because how much time is between these two movies? It's 8 years, right?
Well, they say it's 8 years. It's 8 years yeah, that's right. Because, well, all right, look, they say in the film it's 8 years, but it's actually 4 in real life.
Okay. Yeah, right. It's 4 years because all the 4 movies are 4 years apart. I mean, 3 movies are 4 years apart. Which it's funny when you tie that to Chicago and when the first one came out, Barack Obama was a senator here in Chicago. By the time the next one came out, Obama was running for his first term as president and he won. And by the time the third movie came out, he was going into his third tenure as president. Very funny coincidence. But no, I have big problems with Bruce spending 8 years as a recluse and not being Batman at all. I don't believe that's believable. That just doesn't make sense to me, given not just what we know about the character, but the way we left him at the end of Dark Knight.
I mean, Phil, if nothing else, wouldn't the Bruce that we saw in this movie, wouldn't this Bruce have been more believable had he found out that she had chosen Harvey instead of him? Wouldn't the Bruce that we see here, that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
I think I understand the reasonings for Alfred wanting to protect him for the truth, but I also feel like once he didn't have Rachel anymore, he would have become obsessed with the mission and he would become even more driven to be Batman. The idea that without her, he just wouldn't be Batman anymore just doesn't work because, again, in my favorite Batman movie of all time, Mask of the Phantasm, that's what drove him to continue the mission. Oh, I have nothing as Bruce Wayne. I thought that I could just be happy and I could just move forward and I could leave the mission behind. No, I don't have a happy ending. The mission is all I have.
I mean, in this universe, he stops being Batman, of course, because he has to be the killer, because the city has to believe. And look, Phil shows you what we know. He was right. They talk in the first third of this movie about how crime is at an all-time low. The mob is essentially done. I mean, they're taking the days off at this point, man. And you need to give cops something else to do. There's nothing to be done because it worked. It freaking worked. It did unite the city. But to the point of Rachel being killed, again, had he known, then it would have been, look, all right. So she didn't choose you. And this is what the Bruce we see. But him not knowing it, he could think that she went to her death and that she would want better for him than to be a recluse. so he'll get himself back out in the world. It kind of feels like opposite of what we saw here. That's how it feels to me anyway.
Yeah, and I understand the concept they're going with, because a big part of the second movie is, um, when Batman showed up, he escalated crime. It wasn't just the mob; then it became someone like Joker, and they made the great analogy in the second movie about, all right, when we start wearing bulletproof vests, then they're going to come with something else. It's like the more we escalate our firepower, the more dangerous the crime around it gets because the villains are going to get worse and worse. And so when you have Batman as a part of the ecosystem in Gotham City, the villains are going to get worse and worse. So then if you take him off the table, those people go away. There is no Joker. There are no rogue gallery. And so I get the concept of that. But again, the idea that Batman would just completely give up on the mission isn't believable to me.
Mm. Yeah, that's fair. And it's different because he's got the longer hair throughout this entire film. Like he shaves the face, but doesn't really get a haircut, and he's still a little shaggy. And to their credit, like they didn't bulk him up because like he goes down to that pit for 3 months as well. And then when he comes out, you can see his face is hollowed out, which is the best move because obviously he's malnutrition living in that prison thing, whatever we're calling that hole in the ground. Like,
yeah. I'm sure we'll get into that whole part of the movie of him being taken to that place, and I have mixed opinions of it. But yeah, we've seen him do the body transformations throughout his career for movies, Christian Bale, and so him bulking up in the first movie, and then the second movie kind of hitting a good balance of bulking up and also just using the muscular of the suit. And then in this movie, being a more frail Bruce because he's been in seclusion all this time, and he's still nursing the knee injury from the second movie, and then of course the stuff in the cave. And I think that I think it worked for this movie, but man, just this idea of having 8 years without Batman, and then he goes on this kind of final mission, and then he's just done again. I don't really care for that idea.
yeah, it was odd. I don't get that either. Well, like you said, we've got a lot of story to get into here, and a lot of the cast that I honestly had forgotten were here, and who later became stars. So we'll hit those folks as well. We've talked about Michael Caine. Again, he's pitch perfect here. We don't see him for a lot of this film, Phil, because as we know, he quits. And I found it funny, dude, that the next morning Bruce wakes up and hears the doorbell and immediately calls out to Alfred.
Yeah, without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, he's fantastic here. To round out the trilogy of returning characters, well, there's, I should say, quartet of returning characters. Gary Oldman is back as Jim Gordon, of course, firmly established as Gotham City's police commissioner. And Phil, we find out from the jump that he is grieving over and having a hard time with the fact that he's went along with this ruse perpetrated on the city by himself and Batman. Like, Phil, I could kind of understand if he were to resign, but Phil telling the city that he lied and that Batman didn't kill Harvey Dent, that Batman didn't kill those people, like, doesn't that screw up the city? Like, it doesn't seem like that smart of a decision, does it?
I mean, I very much love where the second movie left off. I don't think that they followed it up well with Gordon, because Gordon's entire character is that he's uncorruptible, and he's supposed to be this beacon of hope in Gotham City's police department. And so the idea that he would lie to the citizens goes against everything he stands for. But it's also this idea that he would tell this lie for the greater good, to protect them from themselves. But then when you come to the third movie and then immediately undo the lie he told, and I don't have an issue with him regretting the lie he told and struggling with it, or everything that came with it, his family leaving him and moving to Cleveland. All of that stuff fits perfectly with his character because again, he's supposed to be this uncorruptible guy. So of course he would have trouble sleeping at night knowing that he's been lying to the citizens of the city all this time. But I just don't think the whole follow up is good. Like him keeping that speech in his pocket that he wanted to tell at the beginning of the movie, and then the bad guy gets a hold of it and reads it later as his manifesto. I didn't really like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm like you. I don't have a problem with him having guilt and seeing Batman demonized, villainized. I do have a problem with him telling the city about it because, like, that to me undoes. And you're rolling the dice. By the way, Phil, it's like that speech. Hey, everybody. Batman didn't really do this. Your boy did. And by the way, I'm out. See ya. Peace. And he's out. Like, that's a heck of a way to retire, Phil, and quit. Is like the second after you tell the whole city that, yeah, freaking Harvey Dent was actually a criminal mastermind by the end of the part 2. I don't know.
Yeah, no, like I said, the stuff at the end of Dark Knight worked because it's for the greater good. We got examples in Dark Knight where if people see Batman as a hero, it not only escalates the crime, but it also escalates things like copycats that want to be like Batman. You had to cut that off. You had to stop getting people to idolize a vigilante. And so I understand the lie to get people to see him as an urban myth and not a hero. That makes sense. But that was even more reason why I felt like in those 8 years, Batman wouldn't have quit. He would have just went more underground and it would have been just like, hey, this guy is to be feared. He's a scourge of the city. He's not someone to be idolized. But then when you create this whole ideal around him not being idolized, but then 8 years he's not doing anything, and all this time Gordon is going around having a hard time with lying to citizens, and he's just sitting on this speech where he wants to tell everybody the truth. That's not nearly as interesting.
No, it's not nearly, no, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, I bumped into that too. I don't yeah. I mean, again, like, there's a problem with in the first 25 minutes of this show we're bumping into things about a film. That's you know what I mean? Like, because either it's good or it's kind of clunky, and this is all kinds of clunky. By the way, the fourth member of the returning cast, Morgan Freeman, getting a little bit more screen time, I would say maybe this time, a little bit more to do, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Still great as Lucius Fox. No issue with the 4 of these guys in terms of their performances. They're all doing what they do. They're very familiar faces. Thank goodness everyone was still on board. No one had to be recast or anything like that. We didn't have a Katie Holmes, Maggie Gyllenhaal situation. Thank goodness. So the original 4 are back. Good to see Lucius still working for Wayne Enterprises. Phil, he actually didn't leave as he threatened to do in part 2. So it's good to have him back in this movie.
Yeah. And I thought he was good here. He's really good in all 3 movies.
Yeah, I agree. We did see Cillian Murphy. You alluded to this in our review of part 2, where he's back doing that court. Like, all right, man, that's cool. Like, sure.
I think it was cool that he's the only villain that was in all 3 movies. I like that he's the throughway throughout all 3 movies. But I definitely was sitting watching that scene and thinking, I wonder, was this scene of like somebody being a judge and judging people based on like what they've done? I wonder would this have fit better if it was one of the other villains? Like, I think specifically if you're going to have a judge character and he's dispensing his idea of justice, that fits Harvey Dent way more than Scarecrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, if you're going by, no, once everything is torn down and I can judge everything by chaos, that fits the Joker more than Scarecrow.
It does fit the Joker. You're right. And this is something to be noted here, kids. About a year before this movie's release, Christopher Nolan mentioned he was considering using a mixture of CGI and deleted scenes from The Dark Knight to have the Joker appear briefly as was done with Marlon Brando as Jor-El in Superman Returns, but Nolan ultimately decided it was disrespectful to Heath Ledger.
Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's Main Event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com.
At the time, I could see that, Phil. It wasn't long after the guy had passed, so I could understand the move to not do that.
Yeah, I can see why he didn't want to do that. And really, that's just a judgment call. We are a long way from there now where a lot of people are making those kind of choices with CGI and unfortunate situations where original cast member cannot be here to film something. I don't know if this movie really needed Ledger or Joker, but there are spots in it where I was like, yeah, it kind of feels like this would have worked better if Joker was here. And certain things like the Blackgate escape and everything, those things probably I'm just like, all right, well, the big glaring question here is where's Joker?
And where's Arkham Asylum? Does it not exist here? I thought that, didn't they mention it in part 2?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, why are you going away from certain things?
Yeah.
And you're going out of your way to not reference certain things from the second movie, but also referencing a character like Scarecrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that it's just glaring. And I don't know if I would necessarily say that Nolan made the wrong choice, but I definitely thought multiple times through this movie, okay, well, where's Joker in all of this? Because he's still alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no kidding. I bumped into that too. The fact they don't even, well, supposedly they don't mention him out of respect to Heath Ledger. And I'm thinking, I disagree with that move. The Joker character existed before. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that, Phil, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I agree.
At least to mention him. But, apart from a very, very brief cameo by Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, who's back, and also they got an actor to portray him as a younger man. I believe that's all the original cast. I think there could be someone else we bump into here and there along the way. Yeah. But you mentioned Bane. Let's talk about Bane. Let's talk about that freaking voice, man. That freaking, I mean, yeah. Look, Tom Hardy as Bane, of course, as we know. Kids, if you love the Venom movies, first of all, God help you. Number 2, it's fine, whatever. But like Tom Hardy can really get into character work, and it's fine. Like Phil, I've got so many issues with this Bane guy, not the least of which is this ridiculous respirator and this ridiculous voice that I don't understand. I just don't get it. It's distracting. There's moments in the film for me personally where like there's background noise, but yet his voice is perfectly clear, of course, because it's not being spoken in the moment. It's added in post-production, which is whatever.
Yes.
But like, what do you think about how Bane is portrayed in this movie, dude? Because this forever changed this character moving forward.
I enjoy Tom Hardy as Bane a lot. I enjoy the physicality he brings to the role. I enjoy just how menacing and terrifying he is throughout this movie. And Buddy, he is terrifying several times in this movie. When he's talking to Daggett and he tells the guy to leave us alone, and Daggett's like, no, you stay here, I'm in control. And he says, do you feel in control?
Yeah.
Terrifying.
When he puts his hand on the side of his face. Oh, yeah, wow.
Terrifying. He does several things in this movie that are absolutely terrifying or bad. The entire fight with Batman towards the midpoint of this movie, where he actually breaks Batman's back, which is fresh out of comics. They reference 2 different crossovers for this movie, just like the Dark Knight is heavily based off of Long Halloween and Dark Victory. This movie is based very heavily off of No Man's Land and of course Nightfall, which is where the Batman and Bane stuff is from. And the fight itself between Batman and Bane, I think is very good. I think Tom Hardy is excellent in it. I understand your gripes with the voice, but his dialogue in that fight in particular is fantastic. He's not just beating this guy down, but completely undressing him, and just completely trash talking him for filth. Fantastic. When they're fighting and he's losing the fight, and he says, "Peace has robbed you of your strength. Victory has defeated you." One of the greatest lines ever. Like, like there's nothing he can come back to say to that. And of course, when he tries to shut the lights off, and he's saying, "Oh, you think darkness is your ally? No, no, no. Darkness is my ally." I didn't see the light before until I was a man, and by then it was nothing but blinding.
Man, it's look, the dialogue's good. I can't argue. And also, I'll say this about this Bane guy, Phil. This is the most physically tested we've ever seen Bruce Wayne to this point, isn't it?
Yes, and I mean, I love this idea that this guy is just used to using fear and intimidation to beat all of these villains before that, and all the villains he's faced up to this point, other than Ra's al Ghul, are guys that he's more physically imposing than. He's more physically imposing than frail Scarecrow, and he's more physically imposing than the Joker. But Bane is completely different. If it's just it comes to physicality, you can't beat that guy. You can't just beat this guy using theatrics and fear and trying to use techniques you learned from the League of Shadows, because he's immune to all these things. As he tells him throughout this fight, he's doing all these things. He's just like, no, none of that works on me. Not just that, I'm stronger and faster than you. And you've to Alfred's point, and the very thing that Alfred feared with him going back out there, you've lost your drive to do this. The mission isn't what it was to you, but vengeance is everything to me.
Yeah. Dude, it takes a long time for him to get the best of Bane. And he only got the best of Bane because he punched the respirator and started knocking it loose. Like, but up until that, Bane was taking his lunch money from him. And
Yes.
like, crazy.
I mean, I think that's another part of it where we were saying towards the beginning of this, where you're trying to still do this balancing act of realism and also comic booky science, and a big time comic book villain whose use of steroids or venom is his advantage. And so I think having him have this respirator and some of the choices you made with Bane, I'm just like, man, just have him use a toxin that makes him stronger. It's fine. I know you don't want to do that because you want to hold on to this realism thing, but I feel like some of the choices you made were even more silly in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, once we found out he was a member of the League of Shadows, I was more okay with the physicality, because like, it stands to reason, Phil, even if you're a bruiser, even if you're an MMA guy, Batman's probably going to take you down. But the minute you say that you've had like what's akin to ninjutsu training in the League of Shadows, then you could say, all right, well then now Bruce Wayne's he's got a file on his hands this time.
Yeah. And like I said, I like a lot of things about Bane. I think he's a great villain. I think Tom Hardy looks the part in this movie. Not just how physically imposing he is, but I think the choices they made with the visual of the respirator as a mask, I thought it looks good. The jacket he wears several points in this movie, the way he stands, the way he puts his hands in the vest that he has under his jacket. I think it looks great. He's visually appealing in this movie. But some choices they made are a little silly. The whole introduction to Bane, and he immediately points out the absurdity of shooting someone and throwing them out of a plane. And then his plan is 2 times more absurd. Your plan is to kidnap this guy and transfer blood while you're simultaneously destroying the entire plane and planning to crash it. it's so overly it's so overly ridiculous. It's like I said, the idea of him pointing out, hey, this is absurd, you're shooting people and throwing them out of a plane, and then he does something that's even more absurd. It's so funny to me.
It's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, and I won't say any film, but of course a comic film to that point. I'm thinking, and dude, the whole time I was first watching this movie, I was thinking, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what this is.
There's so much going on in the scene.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, he's transferring blood, then he's kidnapping the other guy, and then the entire time there's the other plane that has hooked itself to that plane and is destroying it while all of this is happening. You have a gunfight happening inside the plane while all of this is happening. It's so ridiculous. And by the way, to get in this position, he allowed himself to be kidnapped to get there.
Yeah. Because they're all devoted to this weird mission of destroying Gotham. I'm like, have any of you guys ever actually been to Gotham? Just give it a few years. It'll just eat itself. What do y'all like? Phil, once again, the obsession with destroying the city, like it was in the first one, is back again. That ties into my questions about the plot overall, the bad guys, criminal plot. Like, for a story that's eating itself, as I said, Phil, or for a city that's eating itself, they sure want this city to eat itself a lot quicker.
Yes. Well, I mean, that works in the first movie when Ra's al Ghul is saying that city has to go. It's corrupt.
Right.
It's eating itself from the inside out. And so I am going to destroy it because of justice. All right. Well, that doesn't quite work this time when the city is in peacetime. Everything Batman did to make the city better has worked. The city is better. So you're now saying I want to dispense justice by coming back and destroying Gotham, but you're not dispensing justice at all. You're just looking for revenge. And of course, I'm sure that ties into the concept from the first movie and throughout the trilogy of how justice and revenge aren't the same thing. But it's very clear here that Bane's entire plan revolves around avenging Ra's al Ghul. There's nothing here where it's like, all right, look, I am the face of justice here. Well, you're not, though, because the city's doing fine. And then on top of that, your plan to expose Gordon and all of this other corruption, yeah, but their plan worked.
Their plan did work. Yeah.
So you're undoing their plan that worked.
It's like if this movie had gone differently, they show up in the city square and saying, oh, we're taking the city from you. And all the citizens are like, yeah, but we're pretty happy now. Everything's okay. Like, there's bad guys are gone. I'm raising my kids. I got a good job. What are we talking about? What are we doing here? Like, very odd. Yeah, you're right. It's all revenge based. Like, I don't know. Well, look, we're mentioning, revenge plots. And where does the revenge come from, you may ask? We have Marion Cotillard, I believe, as Miranda Tate, but also Talia al Ghul there, Phil, because we waited till the movie had like 15 minutes left to say, there's another villain. Like, all right.
Yes.
So, look, boil this down to me. Did we need Talia al Ghul in this movie?
I think there's a good tie back to Ra's. I was very excited to see the brief Liam Neeson cameo, as brief as it was. I thought that was cool. I like the ties back to Talia, that, of course, she would be the one to want revenge against Bruce and everything because she, again, she doesn't see this. It's the same way. Well, let me rephrase all this. You're creating a parallel between them because in Bruce's mind, I started this mission because someone took my parents away from me. And so in her mind, it's the same way. I've started this mission of revenge against you because you took my father away from me. And then also you have the mirror of them telling the story that only one person has climbed out of this well before, and he initially thinks it's Bane. It turns out it was Talia, and that also creates this parallel between Bruce and Talia because in the very first movie, Bruce's father helps him come out of the well that he falls in. And in the same way, Raish helps Talia after she climbs out of a well. And so I think all of those are very smart parallels. I think they did some interesting things with Talia the character, but boy, her plan doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. It's very convoluted for no reason.
She gets close to, apparently they knew of her behind the scenes wanting to work with Wayne, and Wayne, of course, is, limping around inside his massive mansion. But they trust her apparently because they don't have a reason not to. They trust enough, Phil, that, Bruce gets all kinds of naked with her and then makes her the CEO of his company, Phil. Like, look, talk about, yeah. Talk about sleeping right at the top. She sure did it here, and he fell for it. Like, when's the last time Bruce Wayne let his guard down to that extent that a person he had never really even been all that familiar with, he makes her the CEO? Dude, I really bumped into that hardcore.
Yeah, he trusts her way too soon, and I get you're also trying to sell us on, well, he trusted her because Lucius trusted her, but it's a little bit hard to believe. You're selling us on Bruce went into he's a recluse because he doesn't trust anybody, but then he would immediately trust this woman that he's never met.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then also he's broke and he brings her back home and then they have sex and okay, yeah, I get you're supposed to create this romantic connection between him and Talia. But that works better if we know it's Talia all along. Revealing that at the end of the movie where it doesn't matter anymore and it feels inconsequential doesn't really work.
It was Talia all along. Yeah. 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 It's again, I look, you convinced me more than the movie did that she was necessary because of you pointing out all the parallels. That I'm okay with all of that. I don't know that I'm okay with, okay, guys, there's 15 minutes left. Guess what? Villain number 2. I'm
yeah, and I mean, they planted the seeds for her throughout the movie because, again, telling the story of the one person that made it out of the cave. Okay, I get it. But it just kind of falls apart the more you think about it. Her plan is to come there as Miranda and snake her way into the company and take over, and then her plan of using that core as a bomb and having it be a mobile bomb.
Yeah.
it like I said, her plan doesn't really make sense, and then we add the stuff with Bane in. It's just a bit too convoluted.
It's very odd. I don't. Yeah. And the bond keeps getting moved around, and all right, man. Like, I don't know. Once again, Phil, something that created by Wayne Enterprises is going to be responsible for the downfall of this entire city. Once again, it's his fault, whether he knew it or not.
Yeah, of course. Because again, that plays into the idea that he's escalated a lot of things since he came back to Gotham, which goes back to Alfred's initial point of there's nothing here for you. The more you try and fix this, the more you try, even if you have good intentions, there's nothing here for you but pain and trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to your point, talking about the word pain, like in terms of what Nolan has said, Batman Begins, the theme was fear, The Dark Knight was chaos, and The Dark Knight Rises is pain. So I guess that fits.
It does fit. We see Bruce go through varying degrees of pain throughout this movie. He starts the movie as a recluse who's limping around with the cane. Then he puts that brace on when he decides to go back out as Batman. And that's very graphic as well. It makes this very disgusting noise when he starts flexing his knee. Which that noise, every time I hear it, it just feels like you can hear all the cartilage ripping. But I don't even mind that as a theme. Idea of pain and grief in this movie. Because it does work. And I said toward the beginning of this, there are things I really like about this movie, and there is this beautiful concept of he had to go through all of these things to remember why he was still doing this, why the mission meant everything to him, and he had lost that. And somewhere along the line with the stuff with Rachel and everything that happened in the second movie, he had lost his connection to the pain of losing his parents that made him feel like he had to do this. It's
Yeah.
I get it. It's just the story is told in a very confusing way in some ways, but again, very beautiful. I love the connection to the first movie. In the very first movie, we see Bruce as a kid fall down into the well, and he
Mm.
has this. He goes through this transformation. He comes back to the cave as a man, becomes Batman, and then by the third movie, he takes this devastating loss to Bane, and I mean Bane just completely beats him in every way, outsmarts him, outwits him, and then breaks his back and leaves him for dead.
Mm.
Again, that fight is great. Just the way he beats him, the finale of it, of him blowing up the ceiling and pointing out to him, "Hey, all this time I've been right under your army. I've been literally right under your nose." And then picking him up, breaking his back, and then that visual of him walking away, carrying a piece of the cow, awesome. Um, and then of course his henchmen carrying him into this cave thing that he's in, being tortured, slashed, helped to go back to Gotham for reasons.
Right.
um, but I also just love this idea that he had to climb back down that well in the first movie to face his fears. And then in this movie, it was about him once again climbing out of the well metaphorically. I think that that was very beautiful, the way that they played it up, the way that they built anticipation for him to finally get out of it and go back to Gotham. I thought that that was very beautiful. I also love the metaphor that this pit he's stuck in is metaphorically a Lazarus pit.
It is. They snuck it in there, didn't they?
Snuck it in there just like they snuck some of the other comic book references where if you missed it, it's like, yeah. And I thought that was also smart, but I also think it doesn't make sense. He climbs out of this well, he's in the middle of nowhere, and he somehow gets back to Gotham from there. They never tell us how he got back there or where he was, but we're just supposed to believe that completely broke Bruce Wayne finds a way back to Gotham from there.
Well, Apple Pay. He still had Apple Pay, and it was, got himself a plane ticket. That's a good question. I don't
resources. But yeah, I think all of that stuff with the well, I may not like how we got there, or some of the stuff like we talked about of the old man hanging him up and hitting him very hard to fix his back. But man, just that scene of him climbing out of the well finally, so cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, you're selling me on it. I mean, I do like the parallels. I do like where they dove into the story. I mean, I'm trying to get past the Bane thing. It's harder for me. I mean, he's got 3-inch lifts in his boots. It's fine. I don't care. They had to cover up all his tats with heavy cake makeup. That's fine. He put on 30 pounds of muscle, so at least he looked the part. Worked out, trained like crazy. I respect that. I still am not on board for her. I just don't like I don't know. I just don't know if I was here for it. By the way, when you first saw this, had you figured that out or no?
That she was tall? Yeah, no. It never even crossed my mind.
Same. At least it worked. If they were intent on fooling the audience, it sure worked.
It was a nice swerve. I don't know if it necessarily worked with the story they were telling, but it was a nice connection to bring the entire trilogy around full circle.
There was a brief moment when she's up after they supposedly took her. She's up in the building looking down the street when things start happening. And I think Bane walks behind her. It's a very, very quick shot. But I remember thinking in the back of my head, I wonder if she's crooked.
Yeah. And you also have weird scenes like they had sex next to that fireplace, and then he gets up in the middle of the night and goes to meet Catwoman to go and take on Bane. And then we never cut back to her in the mansion or nothing. We never know what happened there. She's just there. She wakes up the next day and Bruce never comes back and never questions it. But of course she doesn't question it because she knows what happened to him.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. You know, and I know what the intent was with Bane. It was to, you know, he has to be physically imposing. He has to mentally mess with Bruce. Things they took from the books. I get it. He's not just a luchador with a bunch of weird chemicals getting pumped in his back or his neck. I get it. But like, again, as it relates. Yeah. Hey, well, we're tying it in, aren't we?
If you guys don't know, in the comic, that is the name of the toxin that he would use. It's venom.
It's venom. That's right. Small world. Small world with part 3 here. So another new face. And I'm going to let you go first on this one because I got thoughts. Anne Hathaway. The America's sweetheart, Anne Hathaway, as Selena Kyle / Catwoman. Not to set you up for an opinion one way or the other. What do you think about this casting?
I did not understand the casting initially. I was like, I don't know that she fits. But when I actually saw the movie, I think that she's actually very good in the role. I think she is very good at fooling people multiple times in this movie. The first time we see her and she completely code switches and she's just like, oh, I'm just here to clean up the room. And then when she's caught, her voice completely changes. And she does it so seamlessly. It's cool. The way that she outsmarts Bruce Wayne and gets away very much felt in line with the character. I think her and Christian Bale have good chemistry. I don't know if anybody could ever top Keaton and Pfeiffer in the second movie, but they do have good chemistry at several points in this movie. She does small things to get you to think one thing and misdirect. She completely fooled me when she was talking to him when they came to the cave and she was leading him to Bane, and when the cage come down and she's just like, I had to get them off me. I was completely fooled. And she does this several times in the movie, and she's very convincing.
Well, here's what I'll say. I didn't care for her as Catwoman. I don't get the suit. I don't care for that thing they had on her face that they kept letting her flip down as if it were like infrared goggles or some such nonsense. That's comic book science for you.
Yes.
I liked her a lot better as Selena Kyle in a weird way than I did as Catwoman.
Yeah, I thought the suit was good. I thought she looked the part. Again, we're trying to do this balancing act of realism, and so they can't just be cat ears. They have to be goggles that you flip down, and when you flip them up, they just look like cat ears. I get it. I know you're trying to give everything an explanation, but everything doesn't need an explanation. You can't just say that she's Catwoman. She's never referred to as Catwoman in this movie. No. Which I have problems with. But again, you're trying to hold up this realism thing that you don't need.
Yeah, I think there aren't there she referred to as the cat in newspaper clippings or headlines or something.
Yes. But
I think. Yeah.
But yeah, I think they did a lot of things with her that I liked. I liked that they referenced some stuff from Batman Year One, like her apartment, and just the idea that she was trying to take care of people in that neighborhood. And she has the little protege the same way that Batman eventually does in this movie. And again, all of that stuff is straight from Year One.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The character is Jen, also known as Holly Robinson. Holly Robinson, sidekick of Catwoman, of course.
Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you.
And this is Juno Temple. Kids, if you're a fan of Ted Lasso, you know who Juno Temple is. She becomes Keeley in the Ted Lasso show. By the way, kids, Two Nations Under Ted Lasso podcast. Available on boinkstudios.com. Shameless plug. I honestly feel I'd forgotten she was in this, but I like your point about them connecting, at least to some degree, back to the books for year one. I do think that made a lot of sense. At least it humanizes Selena to a point, and she's not like some cold-blooded, crazy chick that got pitched off a roof and cats resuscitated her.
Yes.
Just saying.
we try not to think about the origin story of Catwoman and Batman Returns too much. But I agree. I think that it humanized Selena in here. I think early in the movie where she's talking to Bruce and it's like she's basically saying everything that Bruce would have said in the first movie about, hey man, you guys have lived high off the hog. You've lived high up on your pedestals, and meanwhile everybody under you is suffering. And he's looking around like, you're telling me that? You're doing a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
But it goes for it to present this idea that he and Selena are kindred spirits, and I like that.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I'm fine with it. Me personally, I wasn't a big fan of the costume. Not a huge fan of how the character of Catwoman herself was portrayed, but I think I was more interested in Selena Kyle without the mask. That's me. I think I was more here for her than that. And we don't have to talk about Zoe Kravitz or anybody else. I continue to wonder if have we gotten the real Catwoman on screen yet? I mean, was Zoe it? I don't know. Depends on your point of view. I don't know that it's Anne Hathaway. What do you think?
I enjoy Zoe, but there are a lot of bits here with Anne that I think that she captured the spirit of Catwoman. I mean, Catwoman at her very core is out for self. It's like,
yeah.
And so several points in this movie when she did betray Batman or try and run away, that felt like Catwoman. When they were having when he shows up to help her when she's talking to Daggett, and she's just like, I had it. I didn't need your help. That's very much their dynamic in the comic. When she tries to use the gun and he's like, no killing, she's like, what's the fun in that? Also, that's
right.
their dynamic. All of that fit. Even when she turned on him and then she realized what she had done when Bane revealed that he's Bruce Wayne, and she realized she messed up. Again, that's her dynamic because she is a bad guy, quote unquote, but she also isn't really a bad guy. Like, she really has a heart of gold. She's a thief with a heart of gold, but she's also done things that probably shouldn't have done. And so I thought all of that fit. I thought that fit to captured the spirit of the character. I was surprised that they didn't do any of the connections to Carmine Falcone, because of course that is straight from the books. If you're gonna do Long Halloween, why didn't you do any of the stuff like Catwoman in Rome? But I suppose I'm asking too much.
Well, and there was plenty of opportunities to do that. You could have fleshed her out to a character beyond newspaper clippings,
Yeah. Because correct me if I'm wrong, in the comic they basically allude to is it the Roman or Falcone is her dad?
Gosh, maybe Falcone. Why am I getting fuzzy on that?
Why?
Roman would have been an interesting choice because we never saw him.
Yeah, well, we do see the Roman in the second movie, don't we?
Oh, do we? Why am I drawing a blank on the Roman from part 2? Unless he wasn't called that. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe he just wasn't called the Roman in part 2. But that was his name. That wasn't like a nickname, right?
Yes. I'm trying to rack my brain to remember what is the backstory, but I believe the backstory is that she has a grudge against Falcone, and it's because Falcone is secretly her illegitimate father.
Oh, I mean, that would have made a lot of sense, honestly.
Yes. Which, if you watch the new Batman movie, that's what they're also referencing with that version of Catwoman.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Well, look, we only get her one time, Phil, because as we know, this is the last movie in that trilogy. Would it have made sense if you wanted to include her in part 2 to have included her? Do you think there was enough room in that movie, or there was just too much with Heath Ledger like chewing up the scenery there?
You didn't need her in the second movie, but I thought definitely if you're going to use her in this third movie and you establish Carmine Falcone in this universe, I thought at least you were going to give that tie back to this, that Falcone is her illegitimate father. And I'm now looking it up. That is correct. Um, that is the implication from both Long Halloween and Dark Victory, that Catwoman is his illegitimate daughter, and that leads to the mini-series that referenced Catwoman when in Rome.
Nice. There you go. So another new character to throw into the mix. We got a bunch of them here. Joseph Gordon-Levitt as John Blake, but that's not his full name, Phil. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt is fantastic. We've talked about him here on the show before. If he's done a bad movie, I don't know that I've seen it. I think he's always exceptional. He's really good in this movie as a very believable, honest cop who's trying to do the right thing. I did not care for the Robin thing in the end. I know what they meant by that. I know what they were doing. I know what the goal was. I thought it was weird and I thought it was forced. And I thought we could have went the whole movie without any of that stuff happening. And Phil, you could have just named this guy Grayson. It could have been his last name. I don't know. But like in moments where Batman is not present, he is like the moral, he's the good guy. He's trying to make things happen. He's very, very trustworthy. I thought he was really good in this movie. I question his placement at moments, but I tend to understand why he's here. What do you think about the idea of, first of all, that Robin reference in the end, and also his performance in this movie?
I'm going to pick things in order where I can say nice things first and then get to the things I didn't like. I think, like you said, Gordon-Levitt is great. He's a great actor. He's great in this movie. I like a lot of his character motivations. I like a lot of his acting. The scene where he goes to meet Bruce and he tells him the story of Bruce coming to the orphanage and how other orphans idolized him, and it's something you don't think about, like billionaire orphan and how other orphans would look up to him. And I was like, oh yeah, that is interesting when you really think about it. Like, he's an orphan that didn't need anybody. He didn't have to wait in that place for a parent to come save him. He was his own savior because he was a billionaire. And when you really think of that, that is very smart. But also he tells a story about how he came to help other orphans and how he told him the story of how I realized at one point that I couldn't get adopted because I couldn't get over the anger of my parents being taken away from me. And I realized that I had to put on a mask, metaphorically. I had to put on a mask to get adopted. I had to put on a smile and I had to force myself to put on this image for everybody else, even though I had never gotten over that anger. And when you came to the orphanage, I saw that look on your face. It was the same look on my face that I practiced 100 times, and I knew exactly who you are. And I thought that was a great scene. I thought it was a great way to immediately build this connection between Bruce and Robin, quote unquote, and also make a logical way that he would figure it out. I thought all of that made a lot of sense. I like the idea that they did like kind of this amalgamation of the Dick Grayson character and Tim Drake, because of course that's a reference to Tim Drake figuring out who Batman was in real life, and that's how he eventually became Robin. The idea of a Robin that grew up to be a police officer, that was Dick Grayson, because Dick Grayson was a police officer in what city is it? Not Gotham, but the other city that he was stationed in.
Bloodhaven.
Bloodhaven.
Yeah.
At one point in the comics, Dick Grayson was a police officer. So I like the idea of the amalgamation of those characters. But again, this is where I tell you this balancing act of keeping it realistic and not just putting a kid in the suit and not just doing the fantastical, silly stuff from a Batman character, because you don't want to do those things in this movie. I didn't like it. Just do Robin in the movie. And I get that for a lot of people, Robin is a tough selling point. Of course, we saw the attempts to do it with Chris O'Donnell, which has its problems.
Yes.
Definitely has its problems. But I just hate the idea of you making a Batman movie, but being seemingly embarrassed about some of the aspects that make Batman mythos. If you're going to just do Robin, just do Robin. Don't try to sell us on realism. Just do a depiction of Robin. It's fine. Having his real name be Robin was very groan worthy. I think it was a good reveal to basically show us the entire movie where they're making this connection and he's giving him advice and you're following his journey to take on the mantle. It's a nice little Easter egg for some people. But if you're a fan of the comic and Robin as a character, it's a disservice.
Yes. Dude, everything you said, like it's very shoehorned in. Again, just make him Robin. What are we freaking doing here?
Just do a Robin character. It's fine. But again, this version is too quote unquote grounded and realistic to just do that. And again, I keep saying again, the trend throughout this movie is the balancing act of trying to do that and it's falling it on its face. It just doesn't work. But I think a lot of scenes with Bruce and Blake work. Like I said, the initial scene where he comes to introduce him and reveal that he knows he's Batman, and he still believes in Batman. I very much like that scene. I like the scene where he comes and picks him up after Selena steals his car, which is also a great scene. And they're talking in a car ride home, and he's asking him to explain why the mask, and he's giving him the advice. He's basically, unknowing to us, training Robin in front of our eyes. Later in the movie, when he shows him how to throw the gas pellets, and he's like, "Yeah, count to this amount of time, and then throw it." And like he's showing him all this other stuff throughout this movie. He's training him to be his successor, and I very much enjoy that. But again, just do Robin. Just have him in the suit. I don't understand.
Well, he gave him the freaking cave at the end of the movie, dude. Look, in part 4 that never happened, does he become Batman?
I always liked the idea of them doing Gordon Levitt's movie with him as Nightwing. I think that would have been fun. But still, if you're going to get all the way to that part, you're trying to fast track to him taking on the mantle of Batman without him ever just being Robin.
Sure.
And I just, again, think that does the character disservice.
Yeah, it's like you said, it just doesn't. Again, it's forced. I think it's forced. I just don't. And he's such a good actor. He could, like you said, he could have just been Robin. You could have played this any number of ways too. There could have been things that happened off camera in the past few years that we weren't even privy to.
Bro, we've seen so many variations of the Robin costume. I don't think anybody is asking you to put this guy in the pixie boots and the briefs and the crazy like yellow cape and everything. You put him in a crazy colorful costume, but you could have put him in a version of like the black and red suit and it would have been fine.
Yes.
Put him in a black and red version of the suit and like a domino mask. And I think that could have been a cool moment in this movie. I don't know why we're so gun shy about just doing a version of Robin. And I know, again, it's a tough selling point for some fans, but if you're just going to do a Batman movie, just do a Batman movie. I hate this idea that we're so scared of doing it that we have to do this version of it in this universe. And then you give us a dead Robin in another universe. It's like, bro, just give us a Robin, man. Come on.
Like, we're okay with the grown man that dresses like a bat.
But not a kid that also dresses up. Come on, man. Like, and this is just me as a big fan of Dick Grayson as a character. Just do a version of Robin. Do Teen Titans. Come on, man. Like, it's not that far-fetched.
And also, at this point, Phil, I think it's pretty safe to say, speaking of other heroes, ain't no other heroes in this universe, Phil, because there's no way on the planet that Superman or the Flash or somebody wouldn't have traveled to Gotham to try to help. There's no, dude.
Correct.
Dude. You know what I mean? It's just too big. This is not the Scarecrow and some thugs. This is in the water supply. This is blowing the entire island off the map. Like, we would have had other heroes show up, which is weird. But again, I guess we've established this is a solo hero universe.
Yeah, it's very isolated and very much tonally its idea of this universe. And sometimes that works really well. Sometimes it just doesn't. As a fan of the comics, sometimes I'm just like, You can't do both. You can't very much uplift the source material and try and elevate it, but also shy away from some of the goofier aspects of it just because you want to do realism.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And it's well, I mean, look again, they walk the tightrope in part 1 with grounding in reality. In part 2, we argued maybe it's a bit on the nose at times because man, they want critical acclaim and they got it. But like part 3, yeah, no, it's off the rails. Like the balance is gone. I submit the balance is gone in this movie.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of times the things that I bumped into in this movie was those kind of aspects where it's like, all right, you're trying to sell me on one thing, but at the same time, that's clearly not working. Um, and I know it would have been hard to try and do this super realism, hyper realistic version of Batman and then get to the third movie and give us Robin. But if that's the case, why even introduce that character at all?
Yeah, exactly. Look, this is going to sound a certain kind of way, but I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe in the case of this character, as well as Talia, I don't know if you need either character. I mean, Phil, it kind of felt like extra dialogue, extra lines, extra scenes that didn't really need to be here. I don't know. Like, you want to include Catwoman, fine. Her stuff didn't feel extra to me. The other two did.
Yeah, and that's why I think some of this is studio meddling. I think studio wants to have their cake and eat it too. I think they want to do certain characters, and I think they want to reference certain things, but also it doesn't really work with Nolan's vision of Batman.
Yeah. We also have another returning character who we did not mention earlier. We have Nestor Carbonell is back as the mayor. He doesn't make it out alive. Spoiler alert. Straight as an arrow, Phil, that Gotham mayor. Good for him.
Corrupt the entire time.
We had doubts. Well, I'm just saying, like, we had hopes for him. We had hopes that he was going to be a good guy. And well, again, he didn't make it out alive.
Yeah. It was cool to see the world building, to see the mayor. I got very excited when I heard the name Daggett. If you watch the animated series, Daggett was in the animated series a lot. That's the immediate tie to the Clayface character and his origin. So it was cool to see bits of that. And again, I'm not mad at the idea that we did get a Talia al Ghul. I just think that the way they did it was a bit clunky.
Yeah, I mean, in the animated series, it was Roland Daggett, and Daggett Industries, a rival of Bruce Wayne. He is the creator of Clayface. And in this movie, look, maybe your answer is an immediate yes. Mine is an immediate no. I had forgotten. Did you remember Ben Mendelsohn as John Daggett in this movie?
No, I think Daggett's a big part of the first hour or so of the movie. And I thought it made sense to have him set up as a rival to Wayne and use him, but the execution wasn't always great. The scenes with I immediately think of Daggett again because of the scene with Bane. Because Daggett is essentially a villain in this movie, but Bane eventually takes him off. I mean,
did you remember it was Ben Mendelsohn? Because I totally forgot.
I when I started the movie, I forgot there was Mendelsohn. Which, if you guys don't know, Mendelsohn has also had lots of ties to other genre things that he's been a part of. The rumor at one point that I was going to say Ben, but it wasn't Ben. It was Mads that the rumor was going to be the casting for Dr. Doom.
That's right. Yeah. Ben Mendelsohn, of course, in Captain Marvel and also in Secret Invasion. So, big part of the MCU. Great actor, by the way. There was a Stephen King streaming miniseries called The Outsider. It's very good. He's excellent in it, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to mix him up with Mads Mikkelsen, who was the rumored casting for Dr. Doom. Mads Mikkelsen is also great. He is Thrawn, which awesome in the Ahsoka show, and he's been in a bunch of other things. He was also in the first Doctor Strange movie.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of heavy hitters, man. Again, in this movie, which is very cool. We've also got Matthew Modine, who's making his first appearance in the Nolan verse here as Peter Foley, who, Matthew Modine is freaking awesome. Such a good actor. I would like to have seen more of him, but again, Phil, there's so many moving parts happening in this film at one time that I guess that, he got what he could get. But what did you think about this scene where Gordon goes to his door and saying, look, you got to be a cop. This is about saving the city. And he's in there with his family. Like, I can kind of see both sides of that. But then in the end, he chose to go out and be with his fellow officers and paid the price for trying to protect Gotham. What did you think about this little, very small story arc for this character we'd never met before?
I thought it was good. I agree. I wish we would have saw more of him. I think would have hit harder when he passed. But I also love the idea that, like Batman, Gordon has given everything to the job, and so he doesn't understand another cop that doesn't see that point. And he doesn't even look at it like, oh, well, I could possibly die in the line of duty and I leave my family with nothing, because to him, it's bigger than that. Being a protector in Gotham, being a police officer, it's bigger than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so yeah. And of course, as you said earlier, we learned that Gordon's family has moved. Can't blame him. I'd have been on the first train out of Gotham. I'm just saying. Like,
yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. It's like, if you want to do all of these things and set these things up, why are we not doing a version of Barbara Gordon? Why are we not doing Batgirl? We're just ignoring all those things just for the sake of realism, and I don't really understand that.
Yeah. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. In terms of the bad guys, we have Bern Gorman as Philip Stryver. And Stryver, the last name is from A Tale of Two Cities, which apparently this movie takes direct influence from. I'm a big fan of Tale of Two Cities, man. And in high school, they gave you books to read, and most of your friends would turn their nose up at them. I dove into that book hardcore, and for some reason, attached to it for some reasons I can't explain, love that freaking book, man. So, by the way, Phil, this guy has a very hateable face. Can we say that?
He does. He does.
And his name is Bern. His first name is Bern. What a great name. Bern Gorman. Are you kidding me?
Bern.
Yeah, dude. I was here for that, actually. We've also got Josh Stewart as Barsad, Bane's right-hand man, who doesn't have a lot of depth at all. He's just sort of a yes man. I guess if you're in that spot, keep your mouth shut and do what you're told.
Yes.
We Alon Abatable, I think, as Leonard as Leonard Palvel, Russian nuclear physicist. He's the guy that is killed in Heinz Stadium in Pittsburgh. That's not really Gotham City there, kids. And we had Pittsburgh Steelers making cameos in this movie.
Gotham City. Oh, yeah.
Dude, look, the football scene. If you needed a public display, if you needed, a moment of he's got to get the city's attention, I guess this is fine. Like, it certainly is epic. Like, as moviegoers, by the way, this is ruined in the trailers, Phil, at the time.
Yeah.
The stadium collapsing got ruined. It is what it is. What did you think about that scene, the chaos, the NFL players? What did you think about all that?
I enjoyed it. I think when we first saw the trailers for this movie, and that was a part of the trailers of that stadium being destroyed, and the football player running for the yardage and turns around and sees that the entire field has collapsed. Great visual. Again, the tie to No Man's Land, if you followed that storyline, which is also very convoluted in the comic. Yeah, I think that it looked good. I think that it made this movie feel epic. I think it was a way to continue to build up like the visuals and make this feel like a big blockbuster movie coming out of the second one. But there are just stuff. There's just a lot of stumbling blocks with this kind of stuff in this movie. I feel like sometimes when I watch it that this should have been a 2-part film. But I kind of feel like you told too many stories at once, and I think it would have worked better if the end of the first part of Dark Knight Rises was Batman losing and then getting back to it in the second movie. I think it would have made more sense.
I think you just rewrote this whole film. I think it absolutely should have been, White Album Part 1 and 2, the White and Whiter album, dude. Yeah, I'm here for that. It makes more sense.
Because there's just too much stuff happening. You're trying to do too much, and there's just too much juggling, and it's just sometimes it just doesn't work.
Dude, yeah, I'm here for that. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. Let's see. We've also got Aidan Gillian as Bill Wilson. He's a CIA guy that was killed in the beginning in that wackadoodle plane heist in the middle of the 30,000 feet in the air, in the middle of the sky. Rhett Cullen, who is Byron Gilley, who is the U.S. congressman who maybe has a thing for Catwoman, because didn't he get shot by her in that skirmish in the bar?
Yes,
I think.
Yeah, and it's referenced later. That's how they catch Selena when she's trying to escape, because Blake tells her, "Yeah, we got a witness account from the senator." And she gives the line of "Still in love?" Yeah, head over heels, but he is pressing charges.
Yes, because when he's on her way out, he's like, "Call me," and he's laying there bleeding. Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah, he was also, and dude, he's been a lot of stuff, man. He's been a lot of stuff. If you see his face, kids, you'll know this guy for sure. Been a lot of stuff, and he, as well as, let's see, Chris Ellis as Father Riley, been in everything. He's been in everything, both these guys. So, again, he's here. Tom Conti, he was an unnamed prisoner who served as Bruce Wayne's caretaker in the underground prison called The Pit. Just The Pit. That's it.
Yeah.
Then, of course, as we say, Liam Neeson is back here as well. And, yeah, I mean, again, a great cast here. I don't think anyone's arguing that. And also, Phil, we got to mention, Cullen was Bill Sharman in Winning Time: The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty.
Yes, he's great.
So, yeah, very good actor. Again, hitting all the right chords. William Devane is the president of the United States. We only got him on a very brief address to the nation. Then he disappeared. We also have John Nolan as Douglas Fredericks, a board member of Wayne Enterprises. This is actually Christopher Nolan's uncle, and he reprises this role from Batman Begins. So he was in that film as well. So yeah, Daniel Sunjata, I believe, as Mark Jones, U.S. Special Ops Officer who leads task force in the Gotham City. That thing lasts in all of 90 seconds, Phil. Yeah. Didn't get a lot of daylight on that little angle. That thing was over quick.
Yep. That was over very quick. Man, those visuals of Batman coming back, and the first time we see him back in the suit, and he uses that EMP gun to knock out all the lights, and then when it cuts back on, he's on the Batpod. Those are some cool scenes. That visual of him riding down that street, and you see just like a sea of police cars behind him and in front of him, so cool.
Really, really good stuff. We also have to mention Thomas Lennon, who is, just such a funny guy, man, from Reno 911, of course. And he is Bruce's doctor. And that scene for me, Phil, if you read, I think it's Nightfall was the storyline. I think it was Detective Comics, I believe it was. And there's a great bit where, Bruce goes to his doctor, and his doctor is looking at x-rays, and Bruce's back, of course, is covered in scar tissue, and there's evidence of healed bones and puncture wounds and stitched up from head to toe. And Bruce Wayne in the comics says, well, I fall down a lot. And that's his explanation of the doctor. Like, it would make sense, Phil, that Bruce Wayne would have a doctor. And so I love that they threw that in here. I actually kind of really dug that.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, that was really good. So it was interesting to see Thomas Lennon here. Jim Dangle, of course, from Reno 911, which is really good. Glenn Powell, by the way, Phil, before this dude went and got famous, is in this movie. I totally forgot about him being in this as well.
Yeah. Do you think that was intentional that he has a doctor named Thomas? His dad was a doctor named Thomas.
I don't know, because here's the thing, like, the actor is Thomas Lennon. Did we get the name of the doctor in the movie?
No.
Maybe not.
That is a very interesting Easter egg.
It is. And also we should note here, he was also in Memento as a doctor as well. So there you go. Kind of a little connective tissue, I guess, to that universe. Aaron Eckhart, apparently, Phil, wanted to come back. Although he later stated that Nolan verified that his character was dead, and only archived footage of Eckhart from The Dark Knight appears to be in the film. So we could have had him back here.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that choice to kill off Two-Face. You had some more stuff you could have done with him. I wouldn't have killed the character off.
Yeah. Speaking of Zoe Kravitz, I don't know that I knew this. She attempted to audition for a role in the film, unnamed role, but was rejected for being too urban.
Yikes.
That does not sound good.
No, it does not.
Because, brother, that sounds like something besides other than where you live in the city. So, my God. Well, good for her. She got the last laugh. She got to be Catwoman after all in 2022.
Yeah. I think she's great in the Matt Reeves movie.
Well, look. This plot has got so many holes. You could drive the tumbler through it sideways. Like, I'm sorry. There's so many weird moments. I will use the word convoluted for the plot at times where I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. Like, it's almost like in the theater. It's like, I just want to turn around and say, can we hit the pause button? I'm not sure I know what's going on here. Like, how messy is this plot, dude, overall for you?
Yeah, it's a big mess. I think it completely falls apart in the final act. There are rewarding moments in the final act, but the way we get there is so strange. Having Bane defeated the way he is it's a odd choice. Having Catwoman kill him with one of the cannons from the Batpod, which like you said, the Talia reveal, the Robin reveal. There's just a lot of things in the final act that are just very strange. Batman making his final sacrifice in that helicopter / plane thing that he's in, which is very cool. I really like that vehicle, the Bat. That's what it's called.
The Bat, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how did he get out of there? I don't think this ever properly. How did he get out? Because he wouldn't have had enough time to eject himself, and so you create this scenario where he takes the bomb out of there, and again, this is such a great Easter egg that it has to be intentional, and I refuse to believe it's not intentional. The idea of Batman running around with a bomb. You know where I'm going with this. From the television series of him running around with that big bomb over his head. That's kind of the same shape of this core. That's a big comically circular bomb. And he, of course, gives the great line of sometimes you just can't get rid of a bomb. I believe that was intentional. Doing the whole bomb thing here, I believe that was intentional. But having him trying to get rid of the bomb with the bat, and he sacrifices himself. And we're supposed to believe the reference we got early in the movie of Lucius telling him of a smarter man would figure out the autopiloting. And then he goes, well, really not a smarter guy. A less busy mind could figure out how to do it. And I really mean you. So we're supposed to believe that he did figure out the autopiloting. He got it to work, and he got out before the bat and the core exploded. But when would he have possibly had a chance to do that? It's a bit confusing. But that is not my biggest issue at all with the third act. The plot itself is messy. You set up this reference with Alfred and Bruce because he has a conversation with him earlier where he says, I never wanted you to come back. I had this fantasy of going on vacation and looking across and seeing you with your family, a wife, maybe some kids, and we make eye contact, and we never had to say it, but you just let me know that you were okay. And so we get the scene of Alfred in a restaurant, and he looks up and he sees Bruce and Selena, and it puts a happy ending on this movie. I hate it. I don't I don't like it at all. I think you could have done that same scene of Bruce of with Alfred going and getting that reference of him looking up at the screen and looking across, and then you just see that little bit of a smile, and it's left open of, is Batman dead? Did he see Bruce in that restaurant? And I think that is a way better ending. And Christopher Nolan is such a great storyteller that I have to believe he knows that. But this is where, again, I say studio meddling gets in the way, because I think that's what he wanted to do. I think that he came into this with the full intention of writing a final Batman story where we're meant to believe by the end, maybe Batman is dead, maybe this is the end, question mark.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that works so much better than what we got. But I feel like the studio told him, like, we cannot kill off our main character. We can't even leave it open ended. We have to put the stamp on it to give them a happy ending. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that it fits this movie at all.
And look, he's not dead, because Christian Bale in 2019 said that the studio had approached him about coming back for a fourth movie. And he told them only if Christopher Nolan was returning. And of course, Nolan said, I'm done. I did my 3 movies and I'm out.
Exactly. And I think that that's part of why he was done, because I think there was a lot of meddling in that third movie. Because there's no way, I don't believe that Christopher Nolan, the kind of storyteller he is, the kind of movies he makes, that he doesn't understand that that's a bad choice to outright show the audience that Bruce is there.
Mm-hmm.
It leaves the mystery there. I think that's such a better ending.
Yeah. In other words, you're not sure what the truth is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's choices were made, kids. What can we tell you? Choices were made. The choice to make this Bane and not the Riddler, because the studio wanted the Riddler as the primary villain, and they were encouraging the casting of Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
And but Nolan wanted the antagonist to be vastly different from the previous incarnations. And honestly, you don't follow up the Joker with the Riddler, Phil. It feels, to his point, it's very similar, honestly.
No. And I think you could have done a good Riddler movie, which it's funny, all of these things that almost ended up in this movie ended up in the Matt Reeves movie.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and instead you got Bane. And one of the reasons Tom Hardy accepted the role, he was told he would have unprecedented access to extensive stunt training and equipment that he could enjoy knocking around. So he took the role without even reading the script. Interesting.
Yeah, and I enjoyed Tom Hardy a lot in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, I got thoughts. I don't, the actor himself. Yeah. Okay. It's for me at any given time, it's very interesting choices happening here. He did state that his most difficult parts of the movie were the fight scenes, because he didn't want to beat up his childhood hero, Batman. So, yeah, apparently when he gets in character, boy, you better look out. He's going to be throwing hands, as they say. So everybody look out. We're going to move with that guy.
Yeah. But man, you could see the bits here where Nolan is every bit the filmmaker we know him to be, from the very beginning of starting like this low chant that we get throughout this movie, and this like anticipation building up for something, and having that build up to Bruce in the pit and climbing his way out, and you physically can see the people chanting for him to make it out of the pit. Incredible filmmaking. Like I said, there are bits of this that are very well done, but man, it's all kind of just a big mess.
Yeah, it's a mess. And the chant that you're talking about, Deshi Basara, is Moroccan for rise. So yeah, it's a real term.
Yes.
Well, there again, kids, this is the last in the franchise. I do like the idea that this is, 3 movies in and you're done and we move on and, just reinvent Batman at a later time, which is what they did. We talked about the villains, of course. We know who's in it and who may have been in it. There was also talk of the Penguin being here, and it would have been Philip Seymour Hoffman. But those were rumors at the time. Nolan denied those rumors. The character would have been difficult to adapt for his version of Batman. But then we see what Colin Farrell's done years later. So
fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, well, look, the voices that I was, giving him grief about because it's been parodied for years now. Tom Hardy based the voice of Bane on Bartley Gorman, a Welsh-Irish traveler who was the undefeated bare knuckle boxing champion of the United Kingdom. Choice of the accent is actually a man called Bartley Gorman, who was a bare knuckle fighter, a Romani gypsy. So it's making him more exotic. So I guess that makes sense. Again, the voice is more cartoonish than anything else. But it is what it is. I mean, look, as we get to the end of this, overall, do you think this movie does a good job of wrapping up this universe, or are there so many, bits of, maybe I'll say, nonsense or plot points that don't get rectified? Do you think it's more of a mess, or do you think this actually tidies it up?
I don't think it's a satisfying conclusion. I think it works as a conclusion. I like that Nolan had a finite story that he wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many issues with this movie, and I just don't think it holds up well in comparison to the first 2 movies. They're so much better. There are glimpses of the movie that I feel like Nolan wanted to make in this, but man, it just kind of feels like there were too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's. I'm with you. I don't have a very satisfying end here. I'm left with. Honestly, after watching it again, I'm left with the idea of, you know what? I think I'm okay with the first 2 being by themselves and then allowing my imagination to take it from there instead of watching a third movie. Like, I think I'm better with that. Like, I still believe had we only made the first one, that would have been enough. But, here we are with the trilogy. It is what it is. But yeah, again, it's a little bit too much of a mess for me as well. Well, kids, there you have it. There's The Dark Knight Rises. We told you we're going to complete this sucker for you, and there you go. And hopefully you took something from this. Whether you love the movie or hate it, you probably found some things to agree with and or disagree with during this review. But yeah. I don't know, man. Again, there's a lot of questions left for me kind of dangling of why choices were made, but theories that we have here do tend to make a lot of sense, honestly. So, again, I asked you this in part 2, and we did part 2, but I'll ask you this for the heck of it here. Is there any way that you personally would like to see this version of the Batman universe return, or do you think, too much time has passed, everyone's older now, are we moving on? What do you think?
I personally don't need to see it again. I don't think it even works with a shared universe because you've made the point of making this so hyper realistic. Once you introduce a character like Superman to this universe, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. And plus you've established that he's gone, Bruce is gone, and that Batman died.
Yeah.
Technically speaking.
Well,
Batman's dead.
Basically, Robin is Batman now because he's in the cave at the end, which I think that scene is cool. The scene of Blake in the cave and they mirror Bruce in the cave for the first time, and that's how they end that sequence. I think that that's cool. I think that was well executed. I just don't really care for the choices with the Robin character.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. It's very odd. Well, there you have it, kids. There's the film. And before we get out of here, if you can, Phil, we've summed it up a bunch already, but we'll try one more time. Give me your last word on The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, a very divisive film in a lot of ways. Whether you like it or not, is a culmination of one of the most iconic comic book trilogies of all time. It's sad in some ways that Tim Burton didn't get a chance to wrap up and have a trilogy like he did with his first two movies. And so in that way, Nolan got to do something that nobody else got to do with this character. He got to come in with his ideas, his mission statement, his vision for it, and he got to do 3 movies that did very well. They were very successful movies. Whether I think that this movie is a satisfying conclusion or not, hats off to him because he did do something that's going to last the test of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, as we said when we did Batman Begins here, kids, that, grounding Batman in reality worked so extremely well in that first movie. And then as, the movies went on, we began to see, a few holes in the boat, so to speak. And by the time the third one gets here, it's taking on water quite a bit. But again, a lot of good done here. I think we're better with this franchise than we were without it. I can't imagine the Batman mythos on the big screen existing without Christian Bale in the Nolanverse. So,
sure.
Yeah. I mean, at least it's here. At least I shouldn't complain about any of it, really. At least we got it to begin with.
Yeah, I think it absolutely changed the genre for the better in some ways. There were some things that came after the fact that I didn't necessarily agree with creatively, but man, absolutely changed the genre, absolutely changed a lot of the public's opinions of Batman. Batman is one of the most popular comic book characters of all time, but there are so many things from this trilogy that endured. Man, I remember how many people dressed up as Bane and how many people were doing the Bane impersonations after this. So it absolutely had an impact.
No doubt about it. Yeah, for sure. And look, as I said to you kids in the beginning kickoff of part 2 of this movie review here, there's going to be another Batman. We don't know when it's going to be, but you can just pretty much take it to the bank, kids. There will be another one because this universe will keep rolling along. And look, we're all sitting around hoping that James Gunn makes this thing work. And look, I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for James Gunn especially. I hope everything works out. And it was cool to dive back into this little corner of DC and of Warner Brothers and to talk about these films. We've been wanting to do this for a long time. So we got to thank everybody for coming along for the ride and for checking it out. We'll see where it takes us next, kids. Just stay tuned. A lot more to come. But in the meantime, that is The Dark Knight Rises.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.